heaven is our residence. Jah is my confidence. Every man is a walking dead. When I'm there no more, people will love me more. Talk about the things I've done. Discuss my right and wrongs. When I'm laying dead on the floor, when I can't talk no more. If I go live forever, Shebi Ulua. These are not my words. They are the lyrics of late Nigerian singer Ileri Olua Oladimeji Aloba. You all know him as Mohbad. The unreleased song, which features Mohbad, has got many fans talking, with many others puzzled if he indeed saw his death coming. The unfortunate demise of Mohbad has stirred up a lot of conversations offline, online, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, X, Abi, not Twitter, my apologies. Everywhere, WhatsApp, beer parlor, everybody is literally talking about his death over the last 6 days. Well, the newsroom on Nigeria Info is not going to be any different today, because that sad death and all the conversations about the music industry, some of the ills, some of the things that are not supposed to be, will get us talking on the show as I welcome you to yet another edition of the Newsroom. If this is your very first time of joining us, well, the Newsroom is the program produced by Nigeria Info's Newsroom, where we take a critical look at some of the big stories that have made the rounds in the last 7 days. My name is Ufuoma Egbamuno. It's a pleasure to be here. We're streaming this live on Facebook, Nigeria Info 993, and on our YouTube channel, Nigeria Info FM. Before we go into the big issue for today, which is, of course, I just mentioned it, the unfortunate death of Mohbad and all of the conversations about the music industry, let me just run through some of the big stories that made the rounds in the last 7 days. Of course, the biggest of them all is what we're going to be talking about. And we also saw the Nigeria Police Force talking about commencing moves to review the licensing and regulation of firearms in the country. We also saw the federal government that same last week planning to launch a nationwide vaccination for cervical cancer. Also, the Lagos state government plans to do that also. I think September 25th is when that is supposed to start. And we saw a tribunal ordering for more elections in places where it could not hold. About 40 units or thereabout in the House of Reps election in Etiosa Federal Constituency. Of course, Thaddeus Atta of the Labour Party would have to battle it out with the PDP candidate, the musician, what's his name again? Banky W, and of course the APC candidate Obanikoro. Well, we also saw the federal government inaugurating the first cargo movement from the Lagos-Ibadan rail corridor. Absolutely brilliant news, if you ask me. Lagos state government also swore in 38 newly appointed commissioners, and we also saw the drama in the U.S. court, where the U.S. District Court adjourned ruling on an application ordering the Chicago State University to produce the certificate of President Bola Tinubu. A Nigerian, in some good news, set a Guinness World Record for the most steps climbed on a ladder while balancing a football on his head. Some good news. At least it's not every time that Nigeria is publicized for sad stories. The federal government also plans to make Nigeria aviation hub of Africa, one of the news from last week. We also saw the president, Bola Tinubu, appointing Honorable Zach Adedeji as the new acting executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. And just over the weekend, we also saw the president approving Dr. Olayemi Kadoso as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And that's, of course, pending Senate confirmation. And back here in Lagos, the Lagos Building Controls announced that it is set to pull down distressed structures within Agboye compound after Sunday's building collapse. And not forgetting the disastrous events on the international scene from Morocco and Libya. When I see the numbers, I sometimes I feel like, okay, maybe it's a mirage, maybe it's not true, but it is true. The reality that thousands of people have died as a result of earthquake and as a result of floods in North Africa. Not so great news. No, I'm not going to talk about football. I'll leave it. Even though, man, you lost again, I shall leave it. I didn't say anything. No. My name is Ufuoma Egbamuno, people. Man U fans, don't be angry. We're here to talk serious business. If you notice, the tone of my voice is a bit low, even though I try to sprinkle a bit of comedy in it. But it's a bit low because I've honestly found the conversations over the last 6 days about Mohbad quite sad, intriguing, interesting, because several things that I possibly knew but didn't know the extent, popped up. For this conversation today, my producers and myself have had to reach out to at least 4 persons as guests on the show. Guess what? Almost everybody turned it down. Yeah, that's to tell you how complicated the conversations actually are. But thankfully, someone decided to give us his time and join us on the conversation today. I'll be telling you who that person is, but I already told you at the start of the show that the conversation today will be all about the demise of ex-Malian record signee Mohbad. At first, we heard reports about an ear infection, but it does look like there's more to his death than meets the eye. Well, I couldn't for the life of me. I tried very hard. I did not see that video. I made sure every time it popped up on my timeline or every time I came across it, I found a way to not watch it because I couldn't stand the fact. But those that watched it said the burial, they couldn't even get a coffin of his size such that his head was pressed or bent. Like I said, I found a way not to watch that video because I knew it was going to have a terrible effect on me. So I only heard what people said. Of course, lots of people said it, so it obviously is not a lie. But it's something I couldn't wrap my head around. Thank goodness, just this afternoon, the Lagos State Commissioner of Police, Idowu Ohaonwa, has inaugurated a special investigative team to actually look at the circumstances that resulted to the death of Mohbad. He spoke at the inauguration, that's the CP himself, and says that all the videos from social media are being compiled and will serve as tools for the investigation into the alleged torture and death of the singer. But the Commissioner of Police also cautioned social media users to allow the police carry out its investigation. Let's take a listen to the Commissioner of Police.
I wish to appeal that much as social media could be helpful, we should now refocus any pieces of evidence that could assist us. We should redirect to the investigation team instead of reducing it to the social media frenzy. It will not help at this moment. The grieving family needs succor. They need space. They need sympathy to mourn. The team they've been charged to hit the ground running immediately. And as soon as this inauguration is concluded, their tasks have been set out. And you will start seeing progress from today.
Commissioner of Police right here in Lagos, Ohaonwa Idowu, speaking right there. And I can tell you for a fact that joining us on the show right now is a music artist himself. He's also the founder of Chase Music. Jimmy Abduls joins us on the newsroom this evening. A very good evening to you, Jimmy, and welcome to the newsroom.
Good evening. It's very good.
Could you speak up a bit? Like we're struggling to hear you.
Oh, good evening. I said good evening to you as well, and it's very good to be here.
Thank you very much. I want to say thank you again because, like I did say in my intro, between myself and my producers, we try to get at least four persons to be on this show today since last week, Thursday.
Mm.
Unfortunately, everybody had a reason not to be on the show or outrightly turned it down. So I'm quite
I
grateful.
understand. It's a very sensitive conversation, so I pretty much understand that. Even
Exactly.
I myself was having second thoughts, but I'm all right with saying what it is that I know and leaving out what I do not know as fact. So
Exactly.
I guess it's all right to speak.
So the conversation today, it's going to be more about the music scene, the music business, but of course there's no way we're going to also leave out the major reason why we're having this conversation, which is Mobad himself, all of the things that possibly led to or his death. We'll have to again wait for the police to confirm a lot of these things. But first, let's talk about you. How long have you been in the music business, and what has been your experience so far?
I've been actively in the music industry for over a decade now, since finishing, since throughout my undergraduate degree at Babcock University, where I studied law. I started very early on, so I've been in the industry for about 10 years actively. And I founded Chase Music in 2017. It's artist development label, artist development and music production label. Is basically designed to evolve from the traditional style of record labels worldwide, because I feel independent musicians have outgrown that structure. So I'm trying to tailor make something. Being a musician myself, I'm trying to tailor make something that actually fits to our needs as independent musicians.
Now I'm guessing, this is me guessing now, I'm guessing that you may have had a few experiences working with other record labels that necessitated you opening yours. Could you tell us a bit about what your experience was like?
Sure, definitely. I have been signed previously to um, Universal Music Nigeria, though I did found Chase Music Nigeria before I signed to Universal. And the reason for starting Chase Music Nigeria was the fact that there is more independent talent, right, than the traditional labels can afford or are interested to sponsor. So there's a lot of underground musicians that don't get resources or attention. And basically, this was just an innovation to see that myself and a group of friends of mine could build a community where we push each other further. So though we may not have the resources and backing of labels, through the power of community, the idea behind Cheat Music was to do that by ourselves. Along the line, while going on in my career, and after a couple of songs that performed and did really well, then I started getting the attention of labels, several labels, and I did sign with Universal Music Nigeria for a short stint of about 6 months, after which I had to terminate.
Okay, so time for me to ask you about the trending issue, the the
Yeah.
the, the death of artist Mubad. What's your general thought about his demise?
It's been very, very, very heartbreaking. It's been very, very heartbreaking. The facts and details that have been coming out have been very, very disturbing to say the least. Um, I didn't know Mubad personally, though we had several mutual friends, and severally I would come across him at shows and whatnot, though we didn't know each other personally. But I think just like every other Nigerian and everybody around the world who's been following the story, you can't help but be invested in this situation as it is right now. We are all very, very invested in what's going on with the situation.
Okay, so one of the major issues, or one of the things that have been alleged, has been his problematic relationship with his record label owned by, of course, popular music artist Naira Mali. There have been several issues, about himself wanting to leave the label, getting attacked and all of that. Can you paint for us a picture of what it is like to have an ideal label artist relationship? What's the ideal? What is it supposed to look like?
Okay, so first of all, I'll start off by saying that there are major labels and there are independent labels.
Okay.
Major labels are international and global corporations, right, that work according to ethics, to certain ethics in music business, to global best standards in music business. So there's a lot of legality going on in those contracts. Everything is written down to the T. My obligations to the label and the label's obligations to me, the terms of my termination and whatnot. It's never ever really disputed, So that's with major labels. Then for independent labels are smaller labels, like the Malians, Chocolate City, Aristocrat, BMW, whatnot. I think you get the idea.
Yeah.
These independent labels are actually founded by individuals, right? Individuals or groups of individuals, and they work with a less ethical structure. In fact, the structures that these major labels work with they vary across labels. I don't even think any two independent labels work with the same ethics. So I can understand why it could be an issue terminating with an independent label as opposed to terminating with a major label.
Okay, so just hold your thoughts. I've got one of my colleagues also right here in the studio. Ikechukwu Oyemike is a news producer as well as a news anchor for our sister station, Wazobia FM. Ikechukwu, welcome to the newsroom. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Foma.
Yes,
it's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here. And I would love to ask you, Mohbad is a product of Ikorodu. He is a fan favorite, so to speak. He's one artist that people refer to as street. I have to be honest that if I have to talk about it, the very first day I saw the video, I didn't even hear the song. His song Feel Good, yeah? That's the name of that song from last year. Yeah, from 2022. I saw the video, one of the music video channels, and I literally fell in love with, that's his only song that I know that I can really vibe to. But like I said, I fell in love with that song from first watching the video. That's the kind of power he actually has. So he's someone you could refer to as a street guy. How would you describe, that kind of artist from, say, a Davido, for example, who might not necessarily be from, I don't know if you get my point. Davido, you would think, comes from a wealthy family, possibly doesn't understand the street, possibly, as opposed to a Mohbad who, I hear was once a carpenter, went through the streets before he became the artist that he is right now.
So basically, the difference between the two, because I'm going to speak specifically like from the angle of someone who lives in Ikorodu, who understand the culture in Ikorodu, and having to have someone from there coming to this stage before he died eventually. The difference between a Mohbad and a Davido is that phrase from nothing to something. For a David, like you said, is from a rich background, so at least he had something for himself. He could easily press forward with resources that are readily available. But for a Mohbad, it was like nothing, and eventually became something from the Ikorodu part of Lagos, and some other are different from the VI, the Surulere, the Ikeja. When you talk Ikorodu, you want to talk about the like a deep side of Lagos, a like backward part of Lagos.
Trenches, as we call it.
No, not be trenches like that. Not to,
Oh no, I thought that was
I'm
the
trying
one. Sorry,
to also
no
not.
vex.
I'm trying to also not hit myself because I live there. So
No, it's
but
fine.
the concept,
I
the
get
mindset people have, for someone to come from that part of Lagos and still become something is big.
Grass to grace, so to
Yes,
speak.
it's big. It's big.
So also, there's been some kind of conversations that I've been seeing over the last couple of days that I'm not comfortable with, and I know quite a number of people are not comfortable with it. There's some alleged roots of cultism, so to speak, involved in all of these conversations? Am I guessing, or what I'm seeing is probably true?
Okay, so you're not far from the truth, basically, because we've also had a situation in this scenario where a fraternity had done a debunker,
exactly,
like a disclaimer to a particular person whose name is being mentioned around this old stuff. So, but as far as cultism is concerned, it's not only particular to an area or a particular area of Lagos. It's everywhere. Ikorodu has its own fair share, but don't also forget that Ikorodu has been that place where a lot of stars have come from.
True.
Today, as we speak, a lot of Nollywood actors, when I say actor now, both male and female, a lot of them live in Ikorodu. So it shows you how homely Ikorodu can be to talent. Footballers that have come from Ikorodu to be stars today, the Aziza to Sholas and
I
the
have
rest,
family there.
you know, musicians. You know, we have a Q Dot is from Ikorodu. The last time I checked, he has a property in Ikorodu where he lives.
Does
The last time I
Zlatan
checked.
too?
Yes, Latan in a way, and Sheyi Vibes also, and this bro that just passed, Mubad. You know, so Ikorodu is that place where people can call home, and you can be something you want to be, and they are always very, very homely and hospitable to their own.
Okay. All right. So let me get back to my guest who's joining us on the show. Mr. Abdul, you're still there?
I'm with you, yes.
All right. So you heard me talking about, you know, the street side of thing with my colleague right here in the studio. But there's also a big worrying issue, which, by the way, is not peculiar to Nigeria. And it's the fact that, okay, let me not say fact. It's the allegation that the music business is almost always connected to illegal money. We've seen it in the US. The rise of hip hop, rap, you know, can be traced to illegal money, from narcotics, from drugs. You know, a lot of the labels in the 80s and the 90s were set up from funds, from proceeds of illegal money. And that accusation has also been leveled against the music industry in Nigeria. What do you say to that?
Well, while it's not entirely false that there is droppings of illegality in the music industry, both here and away, I would say that in Nigeria, thankfully, I believe Nigeria suffers less of that. In fact, I understand the hits over the last couple of days and, you know, the revelations that have been on this particular issue. But I think speaking on the music industry at large in Nigeria, yes, there is some illegality here and there, but I would say it's in very minor proportion to the general musical industry. I see a majority of musicians and artists. In fact, most of the big artists that are in the country right now have, over the last decade, made transfers to major labels like I spoke about earlier on. And like I said, major labels operate on a code of ethics. So there is some illegality to the music industry in Nigeria and the world at large, but I think the music industry at large is evolving beyond the need for that, because there are now investors willing to invest in Afrobeat in an ethical way.
So we could say that the advent or the popularity that Afrobeats has had over the last, say, 5, 7, 10 years, you know, has sort of reduced the dependence, because, you know, these allegations have been on for a number of years that
they have been, yes,
that, you know,
from a perspective of fraud or cultism.
Exactly.
So I really understand that, but like I said, big players are coming to invest in Afrobeat. So in fact, the need for that, the need for, you know, affiliating yourself to gangs or the likes, or even fraud or whatever it is no longer as necessary and is no longer as prevalent. In fact, it's fading away, and I believe many musicians are looking to actually
break away
from the need for that. I rarely hear about it as much as I would have heard about it 5 to 7 years ago.
So what's this? Why is there always an issue, you know, between record labels and artists, such that when the artist wants to break away, you know, it becomes a fight to the death? You know, we heard of issues between what's his name, Don Jazzy, and what's the name of that his artist again, One Day Cole. There was a time they had issues. There were issues, if I remember clearly, between Mehdi and the P Square brothers,
G Worldwide and Keys.
You know, Kiss Daniel at a point in time had his own fair share of
Vector and YSG.
Exactly. You know, why is there always this problem when an artist wants to break away from a record label?
There are several reasons, right? But I'll start with the primary reason, which is from the label's perspective, they have yet to recoup their investment. That's the primary reason for most of them, although it's not the only reason. Sometimes we hear situations of artists being mistreated by the labels. Sometimes we hear situations of artists being exploited by the label beyond a reasonable measure. Sometimes we hear from the label perspective, because the label is not always wrong. I know there's a general mentality that the label is always wrong, but sometimes the artist is not being productive. Sometimes the artist is getting carried away by, fame, fortune, whatever it is.
And they're not putting in the work.
Yes, sometimes the artist doesn't respect the label's hierarchy or structure, So it could be both of that, but I know from the label's perspective, it's almost always that they have yet to recoup their investments in the artist, which are usually very sizable. It's very expensive to produce and to market music, as we all know. So it's very, very commonplace for an artist to blow up and feel like, yes, I did it. It's all me. It's all my talent. It's 100% my talent, without acknowledging the label sacrifices and investments of the label. So oftentimes that causes a disparity between artist and label.
All right, let's talk about Mohbad now quickly, as our time, is wrapping up. Do you have confidence that the investigations, by the Lagos State Police Commander will yield the desired results?
Well, at this point, that's the right approach to seeking justice. I strongly demand, like every other Nigerian, demand for justice and transparency in the situation and justice for Mohbad. I feel like a lot of information has been coming out by the public, and that should give lead to the investigators on this case, because there's a lot of information being thrown out into the public, even by the day. I'm surprised that this is about 4 or 5 days after his sad demise, and a lot more information is being brought to light. There's several witnesses or alleged witnesses. There's a lot coming to the light, so I should believe that the investigators have a lot of information to work with. They're not starting from ground zero, and I believe they should be able to find justice for Mohbad.
Okay, KHQ, you have something to say about this?
Yeah, so while I commend the fact that the police have started something on it, investigation, I see it as something that is coming rather too late. Because
Why?
The death of Mohbad, I believe, would have been avoided if the police had gone by the petition he had written earlier in June before this incident. Because, this is someone who had gone through a lot, and he has done every bit to make it known to the public, either in his songs, like the opener for the show. You reeled out those words.
Lyrics.
Yeah? He has done it in his songs, he has done it in live videos and all. So I believe the police should have done this much more earlier than they are doing right now.
True.
I want to agree with that too, and of course, Jimmy Abdul's is also saying true underneath the sound of my voice, because I'm looking at some of his tweets from October last year, September last year. You want to
Even
think
as early as 2021, he was always complaining on social media, on live videos, and I know it takes a lot of courage as a musician.
to actually do that.
You are a brand, you understand? We always see ourselves as brands, and we wouldn't want to come out in any light that paints us negatively or causes the public to pity us, because it's bad for business, it's bad for music business. But for him to have had the courage to speak up severally over the years, I feel like Ichuku is very right. He should have taken a cue from the alarms he was raising, and this could have all been avoided.
All right, Mr. Jimmy Abdul, thank you very much for joining us on the Newsroom. We really appreciate this conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we've been speaking to music artist and founder of Chase Music, Jimmy Abdul's. And of course, we had Nigeria Info's news producer and Wazobia FM news anchor, Ikechukwu Yemike, also joined us. Ikechukwu, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, bro.
You're not from Peckham, are you? All right, guys, that's the conversation for today. Ufuoma Egbamuno is my name. Thank you very much for joining us on the newsroom today. I'll do this again next week, Monday, from the 6:15 p.m. hour. Until then, have yourselves a wonderful evening. Game is courtside rather. It's coming up in a bit, and after that, there's a live football game. Nottingham Forest and I've forgotten who they're playing. They're playing Burnley. Yes, I remember now. The Femi and the gang will be in the building to bring you all the live commentaries and action on that one. Take care, people. I'm out of here.
.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.